Hey, Adrian, thanks for joining us today. As we're getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. My name's Adrian Callahan. As you can tell, there's a little bit of an accent. So I'm originally from Wales, the UK. Came over to America many, many moons ago, playing soccer. End up staying here and chasing the white picket fence of America, I guess, and jumping
Yeah.
into the workforce. But being in sales leadership for a decade and a half, and absolutely, absolutely love what I do.
How'd you get into sales?
Man, so that's a kind of an interesting story. So I was always involved in more of a customer service, right? Work in big box retail stores. And then just an ex boss came up to me and asked me, was like, hey, I work for the sales organization. You should come over. You don't have to work 60, 70 hours a week, especially during fourth quarter. Give it a whirl. This is my W-2. Look at this great stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay, I could possibly do that, but I'm not a salesperson. I'm like, I don't think I'm great at sales. And she was just like, you're a great people person. You're a people person, and that's big in sales. So come give it a whirl. And I did, and I've been in it ever since. And I love it. I've grown throughout multiple organizations. Love the challenge, ever since playing sports back in college. I was a captain for 3 of my 4 years. And I think that's just part of being a leadership. Like, yeah, I think you're born like you're born a leader, and that's something you want to take on.
Yeah. And how long did it take before you became good at it?
I never think I'm good at it. Just to be real, I think you're always, whether it's listening to podcasts, reading books, you're always trying to improve. Um, you're always striving to be great, get better, and then it changes, right? It's COVID. Think what's happened the last 2 years. All of a sudden now virtual selling becomes a thing, and then you're listening to other authors and podcasts and trying to carve out your own unique skill. So, do I think I'm good at it? Yeah. Do I think I can be better? Absolutely.
Yeah. And why'd you move into leadership? Was it just a natural progression or did you get pulled into it?
It was. I mean, it was a natural progression. I think the team I was working with peers saw me as the next leader type deal. So I just went with it. But I love leading people, right? And I think it's not a case of, hey, you become a leader, let's see what you can do. I think all leaders have to be able to walk the walk as well. So whatever I'm rolling out, whether it's new technology, new talk tracks, whatever, I've got to be able to walk them. Don't just hand it down and demand. So walk the walk and talk the talk. And I think that's what strong leadership is about.
Yeah. And what do you think differentiates those great reps from the okay reps from your perspective?
Being adaptable,
Mm.
like truly everybody, listening to your podcast and talk, ultimately you should all be self-motivated, right? Like whether you're doing your vision boards and talking about the Porsches you want to drive or the basement you want to remodel. Okay, what's underneath that and how do you get there? You should be self-motivated. But the best, I think, can turn on a dime. Like whether there's, think COVID, right? And all of a sudden you get shifted from an office environment to a virtual environment. Can you adapt quickly? And those who are willing to adapt and be resilient, I think they work out longer.
And do you think moving to a new country kind of built up that muscle?
Um, it may have, right? Like 16
Yeah.
years old, being forced into living in dormitories, but that was hard. But I was also from a very hard background, right? Like we lived in council housing, which is kind of like Section 8 housing here. It's a lot different. You grow up different times, different places. But yeah, being 16, living in a dorm with 8 other 16 to 17 year olds. But then you also see 12, 13-year olds from Russia in the same place. And you're like, how do they do? I'm 16. So yeah, you get thick skin. I did get a thick skin fast. I have a child, and he turned 16. He actually turned 17, and I think of sending him to another country. I'm like, there's no way. But social media, and it's a different world now than it was 20 years ago, 25 years ago.
And when you were offered that chance, if you can remember when you were 16, how did you view it? Was it like an incredible adventure, or was it overwhelmingly scary? Or
It was. I was 16 years old, and I didn't get offered a professional contract. I actually got cut from a team. It was a Premier League team, so big soccer. And I thought my world was done. Like, I'm 16 years old. This is done. What else am I going to do? All right, I can go do roofing or plumbing, or carpentry with my uncles and brothers, which no shame on that whatsoever.
right?
That's how we got by. Um, but I always thought I was destined to do something different. And next thing you know, the opportunity come up. Family remortgaged their house, and I moved and I did it, and I've been able to be successful and do everything I can to pay them back. And I also ultimately want to do the same now to a niece and nephew of mine back in the UK, and have bring them over.
Yeah. And why do you stay at the same company? You've got a great run.
Um, because I love what I do. Like,
Mhm.
I truly love what I do, and I love my team. I don't, and whether this right, wrong, and different, I work for me and my team, right? Like, the logos, the who you're working for is fantastic. They pay you, but ultimately my team works for me. And I know there's that big saying that people leave their managers, and I take that to heart. When someone leaves, that's on me. That's not on my company. It's on me. And I think that's what sometimes separates so good leaders from very average leaders.
Yeah. And how do you keep that morale?
It's been tougher, right? Especially the last 2 years. So you've got to keep it going. You've got to keep it fun. You've got to keep active. But my team knows I don't believe in micromanaging. Like, yeah, put in your honest 40, those type things, but never miss your kid's game. If you got to put them on the bus at 8:30, that's okay. Let me know. Hey, can we move our meeting? Right? If we have a one-on-one, those type things. I'm not checking in on you every hour of the day. Like, there may be a day goes by where I don't even speak to you. I expect you to reach out to me if you need help. And that's the way I want to run my team. Like, you're adults, you're self motivated. But yeah, we're in sales as well, and there's numbers tied to everything. So there's going to be peaks and valleys. But when you're in that valley, let's work together and gain you out.
Yeah. And does that leadership still motivate you today, or do you want to move up, or do you want to stay kind of a people
I want to
manager?
move. Oh, of course, I want to move up. I want to have a bigger impact over more people, and I want to lead leaders. Right. So yeah, without a doubt, my goal is to get promoted within my organization and continue to grow, develop, and those type things. And who knows, maybe move abroad and help over there as well.
Yeah. And when you look at hiring reps, what do you look for?
Um, so there's this old cliche, like, you got to run people through so many interviews, and hey, you got to do this. That, like, at the end of the day, if people are looking right now, and if they're a good fit, they're probably looking at many organizations. So you better be quick to hire them, otherwise they're going somewhere else. But I obviously look at the background, right? You try and spy a little on social media. You look on LinkedIn, those type things. You want to make sure they're not a job hopper. I think everybody knows, especially in leadership, hey, sometimes maybe the fastest way to get a bump in pay is jumping ship. Like, everybody knows that. But I don't want to hire someone who's hopping ship every year, because I think in sales, you've got to build your database. You build that camaraderie. You talk to folks. They move in different organizations. You follow them. Those type things. But self motivated, and truly, I want folks who are going to outwork anyone else.
Yeah. And how about ability? How do you judge that? Because a lot of people, can be order takers in a hot company.
Right. Right. Yeah, and I'm definitely not an order taker. Right. It's the ability is, everybody's going to have that ability. you're self-motivated, you get involved, you're going to have to learn them, new talk tracks. I know I said that before, but every organization has a different way of doing things, but you've also got to put your spin on it. And my team, I'm opened up like, hey, if I'm bringing something down the pipeline and you don't think it's going to work, bring that back. Let me know. Let's talk about it as a team and develop our own way.
Yeah.
And that's okay. As long as we're still getting to the same end goal. But ability is hard to track, right? Like you can keep your spreadsheets and hey, they're red, they're green, they're yellow, all this stuff. But ultimately you gotta have faith that they're gonna do the job. You gotta know what their vision board, their family is all about. And that's certain ways you can kind of dig or poke at them, be like, hey, you said you want this. Well, you got to do this, this, this. Are you continuing to grow? Are they asking for feedback? If our one-on-ones are pure silence, it's not a good thing.
Yeah. Well, what do you look for in a one-on-one?
Um, I want them to bring topics, right? Like I will put together, hey, these are what went well last week, what maybe didn't go well, what are you working on, those type things, but also development needs. What do you want? And when they're coming into the one-on-ones and saying, hey, I need help with this, can you show me? Absolutely. I'd love to show you my perspective and go through whether it be a role play, those type things. But now I want you to also reach out to a few of your peers and tell me how they role play with you, right? Because my way isn't always the right way.
Right. Yeah.
But learn from multiple people and come up with your own. But it's about being open 100%.
And how do you maintain that openness? Because the natural thing is to tell the manager what they want to hear so you can go back and do your job, right?
It is. So I have that very, whether it be dark British sense of humor.
You
So
guys are pretty dark.
yeah, I can be a little dry as well. So sometimes newer folks take a little time to get used to me because it might come off the wrong
Wrong
way,
way. Yeah.
but it means like, no, like I truly care about you, but why? Like, show me why. Hey, you want this, but then why are you doing this? Right? Hey, you want to work hard, you want to close these deals. All right, why are you updating Facebook and all these likes during the call session? So there's many different ways that I can come across it, but ultimately, I want my team to work hard for themselves and their family, right?
Yeah.
And know that there is a growth path, whether you want to get into leadership. Some people just want to stay in sales, right? Like some people
Sure.
absolutely love it, and that's great. Okay, well, let's see what we can do to be the best of that.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't know how to manage that because, you know, because management is completely different than
Right,
sales.
right. And again, I think a lot has changed right now because individuals have more options right now, right? Like the market's tight, people jump ship, those type things. So I think some leaders are maybe scared to push the button a little bit because well they can go join someone else or whatever may be. But you've got to be open with them, and if your team believes in you, that they'll stay through good and bad. That they will 100% work for you.
Yeah. And why do you think that is? Is it because you show that interest in them, that you're not this autocratic taskmaster or
No, like
know-it-all?
no, like you just can't be like you can't be a know-it-all. You've got to know. You've got to whether you meet their spouses, significant others, they meet my wife, my kid. I send them pictures when my kids playing volleyball, soccer, and I expect them to do the same. Like it's got to be family focused, and then there's empathy, and we had we have deaths, right? Like whether family members, and we're sending flowers and crying together. It's that's what it's about.
Yeah.
Like it has to be much more than the badge you're wearing.
And why do you think a lot of managers don't get that? That they don't want that level of exposure?
Sometimes I think it's because they're working for the next job.
Yeah.
That makes sense, right? It's a case of, hey, this is my stop for a little bit, but I ultimately want to get to the next step, to the next step. Okay, well, master your craft right now, and it'll eventually happen if it's meant to happen. But in some other, especially in sale, right, there's high turnover. Maybe they don't want to get emotionally involved with people because they're scared they're going to lose them or open up too much. But that's not me. I think, and you got to show empathy. You got to be involved. You got to know what's going on in their lives because that could have a dramatic impact in their careers as well. And that's the way I see it. Is like then they're more than people, right? I know that sounds cliche, but they're more than people. They're more than just numbers. They're
Yeah.
human beings that have to bring back a W 2 to pay mortgages.
Yeah. And what differentiates the best reps that you've met or been exposed to from the okay reps?
I think constant learning, like constant learning, being, and I talked about a little bit earlier, being willing and able to adapt. You're going to get more no's than yeses. That's just the nature of sales. But it's, can you move on to the next? Because the next one is out there. It's kind of if I, you may have heard this before, if I give you 100 scratch cards, right? Like you're going to scratch them all. You're not going to go 80 and be done with it if none of them are winners. The next one could be that winner. And that's the sales drive that keeps people going. And that's the story I use. It's like, you just never know. Move on to next.
Yeah. And how important do you think like raw intelligence is versus those people skills?
I would take people skills over anything. Um, People by people, right? Like one of my favorites, if you're not fixing a problem, right? Like think of something, and I may be going off topic here, but think of something like Shark Tank. I love that show. But at the end of the day, you got, for them to invest, it has to be something that's unique. It's fixing someone's problem. So it's not just by the invention, but then, and I think that's in sale. Like, not only are you bringing something that's unique to them, but can you be the people person that they know can run that business as well? Right. And then you're going to get the interest in buyers to be like, hey, you know what? That guy's not just a good salesman. He's fixing a problem, but I trust them.
Trust, and you like them, to spend
Yeah.
time with them, to work with them.
Right. And liking is different, right? Like I don't need friends. Like I don't want more friends. We all have enough friends, those type things. But I want to work with someone that's going to get me to the next level or fix my problem that I'm having.
Right. And to get to that point, you have to communicate with them, right?
Yeah.
And to communicate with them without the problem is the
Yeah.
liking.
Right.
Because
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
You're absolutely right.
because what you
The-
sell is a time-based thing. You got to find the problem and the right time.
right. 100%. It's uniquely challenged, right? And obviously with COVID, what's happened, it's also changed the dynamic. More people are now having outsourced than ever before. So without a doubt, like everything is moving faster technology wise. So we got to keep up, but we've got to show folks, hey, next level is this. I think of my 16-year-old, like they're doing homework via like Snapchats and those type things. Like it's crazy.
Yeah. And what would, when you meet most reps, is there one thing that you just like to shake them and say, do this or stop doing that, that you think would really take their career to the next level?
Um, Stop doing what everybody else is doing. Like, just because they're winning doing that. Yeah, you may take a little piece, but it doesn't mean it's going to work for you.
Yeah.
You've got to uniquely find and adapt to your own rhythm, your own cadence. Like, what are you doing each week? What are you doing each day? But most importantly, like time management, right? Like someone might have to fully work 50, 60 hours, but someone who's really, really good and organized with their time management may be able to do it in 10, 15 hours.
Well, that's it. A lot of people are bad at the basics,
Right. Right.
you know, and you
Yeah.
can tell in a one-on-one. Are
Yeah.
they early? Do they have a plan? Have they thought through?
Yeah. You nailed it. Like time management is the biggest thing. And, there's all this one thing you don't get back is time. So just use it wisely. You have the same amount of time as everybody else. They're winning, you're losing. So let's figure out what we need to do with your time.
Right. And a lot of it is just they don't have control or they just meander.
Right.
They get stuck on a conversation, bubbler talk, catching up on the weekend, and it goes from 5 minutes to 50.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, if we're booking a meeting with someone and it's, hey, and it's 30 minutes, first 10, you shouldn't be talking about golf on the weekends.
Yeah.
Like, hey, that probably should have already been knocked out or done. You have 30 minutes with a sea level. Time is money. Like, don't talk about golf on the weekend. Definitely don't talk about politics or the picture of the family in the background. Like, hey, I'm here to meet you. I want to make your organization better. This is what I can do.
Yeah. And what was the most important lesson you learned as a salesperson?
Me as sales, it was just understanding people. Like, stop vomiting your items on people, like 100%, because there's many others that do the same thing. But what makes you individually unique, right? And it took me a little while to figure that out because I thought it was the biggest, the baddest, those type things. Hey, I have an accent coming in here. People will meet with me, but that doesn't matter. That it doesn't matter. It's, at the end of the day, is how can you help someone's organization get better and and help them move forward.
And that's kind of hard to teach too, isn't it? Because everyone thinks it's about the product and the sale instead of about the client, what they're up against, how you can help them, get them to see that.
Right, but why not ask that? Hey, what are you up against?
Yeah.
What has the last 18 months been like to you? Right, like I just met with an organization yesterday. It's like, how do I compete with a large coffee shop that's offering benefits for less than 30 hours employees? Like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
How can I compete? How can I compete with Walmart, who's giving $16 to 16-year-olds? Like, how do I compete with that? Okay, let's start talking more about your culture. Why would people want to work for you?
Yeah.
Could I get promoted within? What do your benefits look like? Those type things. A little bit deeper. How did you start your organization? Is this family owned? Right? Like, understand where they want to go, what types of level of people they want to hire. Hey, if you're doing drug tests, background checks, that rules out so many people right now. Like, it does,
It
right? When I
does.
work organizations are like, hey, we can't even do it anymore. Otherwise, we won't get
We
people
won't be able
to
to
fill the
hire anyone.
spots. Yeah, that's nature of the beast.
And a lot of people don't think that can be taught, that empathy, that interest and curiosity in them.
It can be, right? Like, it
I think
can.
so.
And I don't think it's, I
And
grew up from a different background from many, but it can be. You just gotta, it's the whole, I have one mouth, two ears. Like, listen more.
and kind of really push yourself to understand them.
Yeah.
And I think that pivot point when you start to learn that it's all about them.
Yeah. I think on one of your earlier podcasts was all about curiosity, right?
Yeah,
Like, hey, so you make a widget. Where did this come from?
right. Well,
Why did you make this? How did you get into this field yourself?
right. People would say, well, that has nothing to do with the sale, but it does. It has to do with them and getting
It
that
does.
motor, get that momentum in their conversation. Because once they start,
It
right?
does. It does. And I'll use this, and my team will I tell this story all the time. I work with a financial advisor, personal finance. I get so many stuff in the mail, so many phone calls, emails left. I ended up going with a guy that knocked on my door on a Saturday afternoon when it was 90 degrees outside and he was in a suit.
Yeah.
I went with him because he got out and knocked on my door and wanted a conversation, not an email, not a phone message. He actually knocked on my door and wanted to talk. I was like, hey, I'll meet with you. Next thing I know, he's my financial advisor.
And what did he do when you met?
He knocked on my door. I had an honest conversation. He opened up talking about my lawn. I had like a dog poster in my window. Those I think opened up and he's like, "Hey, I'm here. I just would love to see you in the neighborhood." And I was like, "You know what? I truly appreciate being in sales. You're out right now pounding the pavement in a suit, and it's boiling hot outside." I
Yeah.
was like, "I'll meet with you." And he went through the sales pitch that anyone else would have went to, but it was the case that he was willing to go that extra step that I give him my time and my business.
And, because when we were able to visit clients, a lot of times you'd get the business because you showed up.
Yeah, yeah. And we still have like there's still a
Yeah.
lot of organizations that are like, hey, we'd rather meet with someone. Can you please come on site? 100%, absolutely do that. But there's others like, hey, we've already done 75% of the research. We know what we want to do. Now we just need to do a demonstration, or we can do a WebEx, right? Like our world has changed and it's never going back. So we have to adapt to technology.
And for first time sales leaders, what advice would you have for that first year?
Listen to your people. Like there's probably a reason why that person got promoted and why that opportunity was open. Try and find out why. But stick by your morals more than anything else, right? Like you work for them, they don't work for you. And my team will know this. I'm always about, hey, you send the elevator down, like 100%. You take care of the people that, uh, not necessarily below you, but part of your team.
Yeah. And how do you maintain that?
Like as a leader, how do you? For me, it's just the nature. It's got me to where I am. Whether it's being successful, and I just feel like, hey, I'm good at that. I love my team, their families, their kids. I guess it just goes back to my background, my upbringing. Like, be you don't have to be a people pleaser because ultimately you got to be like that grandparent as well that has to discipline them. But show empathy and love your people, and they'll love you back.
Yeah. And have you ever had a challenge being that honest and open with them?
Yeah, because sometimes it can come back and bite you, right? And people
Yeah.
would you think they're taking advantage, like, oh, he has a huge heart, he's fine. I can take a half day and I'm done this, done now. I've missed 2, 3 months in a row. No, it's not. It'll ultimately always comes back. Like
Yeah.
fool me once, okay, don't fool me twice. Don't if I'm gonna give you my full trust, be honest and open, and good things will happen. But if you're gonna burn bridges, they're very hard to rebuild.
Yeah. That's a great point. Hey, I really appreciate your time today. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
I mean, I'm on LinkedIn, just Adrian Callahan. I don't necessarily have, well, I have a Twitter and all that, but I don't necessarily use it. But no, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Love what you're doing, and all the best.